Right, so the Labour Party, set up as it was by the trade union movement to be the party of the workers and the working class, to defend them against pernicious bosses out to get them, to get put in place protections in the workplace. And the leader today of that supposed movement, the party leader, Keir the Kid Starmer, has now announced he's rowing back on the commitments he's made on workers' rights. A wit on Twitter recently wrote, I was listening to Keir Starmer recently, a fine politician and an honourable man of his word. The other two were okay, but I couldn't stand Starmer. Hilarious if only it wasn't so true. Starmer is a political pygmy, woefully out of his depth, carried there by ambition and overuse of hair products, not to mention a blatant display of pretending to be something he wasn't, promising a vision he never intended to keep, and now the Labour Party's most basic tenet, its very reason to exist, to protect the interests of the working class, has been binned. Why on earth would doing something that will arguably cause the party more reputational damage than anything else somehow be seen as a winning way to power? Well, Team Keith will argue that this is not what they're doing. They're standing by the workers' rights as they exist now under the Tories. Well, that's ambitious, isn't it? Not. They'll argue that they're refusing to strengthen workers' rights. Why? What are you for if not for that then? So you know better than the Tories then? Wages down, cost of living up, protests clamped down onto the point of criminalisation, anti-trade union laws introduced. Are you still repealing them then? Actually, because you said you were going to repeal the last lot. Is that out the window as well, or can we expect it to go out the window too? The gig economy still utterly at the mercy of their employers, who claim not to be their employers, regarding all these workers as self-employed. This is all part of a wider pattern, though. Labour now under Starmer are just the Tory B team, waiting for their turn in power to serve establishment interests, not wanting to or intending to rock the boat there. But when there are two pro-establishment parties, as there are in Labour and the actual Tories, they're still in competition with each other in what amounts to a race to the bottom then. Labour still have a massive poll lead. It'll close the minute people start seeing Starmer live on an election campaign, of that I'm certain. He has all the likability of a dental abscess, a personality so bland his favourite spice is plain flour, has more faces than a town clock, and a politics club sixth former would wipe the floor with him, though given the amount of Brill cream present, that might end up providing a slip hazard. Health and safety might prevent it, but I digress. The pattern is that no matter what Starmer and his party might commit to for 5 minutes, the moment the Tories criticise it, it gets binned for fear the poll lead and former Tory voters they might have attracted, or more importantly Tory donors, since Labour's finances are in a perilous state these days, might be lost. There's no principles there, in which case, no vision to make the country a better place at all. It is say whatever, do whatever it takes to get power for the sake of getting power, winning for the sake of winning, and once you get there, what then? Oh, well, that's a problem for another day. And it's this shameless, dishonest attitude that has driven former Labour supporters away. But equally is also driving the abject stupidity in some that this dishonesty means Starmer can somehow be trusted to U-turn and become a socialist once in power. If you really, really believe that, you should definitely look into the guy's background, because there is absolutely no evidence that he's actually of the left. He's a drone for right-wing Blairite thinking. He believes that is the way to power because it puts the media on his side, the establishment on his side, and so he will be, therefore, allowed to win. This isn't a democracy when only one of two parties who will do nothing different from each other whatsoever are the only ones who can ever reach number 10 under the current system. So what is Labour now saying it won't intervene in then? That's brought us to this point that's got me so het up and teasy. Well, we're back to those gig economy workers. Labour had originally planned to bring in a single status of worker. It says it still is. It didn't matter whether they were employed or self-employed, part-time or full-time, didn't matter what sector they worked in, what their wage type was or what their contracts were. All workers would have the same rights. And this was supposed to include gig economy workers who have been particularly at the mercy of unscrupulous bosses over wages, working hours, contracts, worker status. And this one-size-fits-all workers' approach that Labour mooted was supposed to include them and raise their rights up as well. Yet instead, they now find themselves left out in a watering down exercise to offset Tory party criticism. Effectively, the Tory party are now dictating Labour Party policy because all they have to do is attack one policy area and Starmer and his lot immediately water it down. According to the Financial Times, the Tories have drawn up a list of 20 Labour commitments they see as anti-business to attack the party with later on. And if Starmer thinks he can win an election during an election campaign by binning whatever the Tories say they don't like, people are going to go off him very, very fast. Basic rights and protections were all that were being promised to those working in the unstable, uncertain gig economy, and now Labour have abandoned that. Another area watered down has been on workers' rights from day one for all. Sick pay, parental leave and protections against unfair dismissal still stand, but if you happen to be on a probationary period, you can now forget all that. So what's to stop everybody ending up on probationary periods going forwards then? So what have the trade unions said about all this? They fund Labour, you might be thinking. Well, this all came up at the recent National Policy Forum, which I covered in another video, with the trade unions wanted concessions from Labour on workers' rights, and Starmer wouldn't budge an inch on anything, leading to dinner boycotts and walkouts over talks. And Unite, Labour's largest donors, refused to sign off on this policy. Starmer was basically telling them to accept in a his way or the highway moment, watering down of workers' rights and also restricting access to the very unions that created the Labour Party and that stands up for members' rights at work. The anti-union side of this really does beg the question of the trade unions continuing to fund the party when, as trade unionists, as a Unite member myself, we're getting less and less out of this. Of course, the Labour official line isn't that they're jumping to the Tories' tune, it is that they have to be more pro-business, more accommodating to capital. A capitalist party then, like we need another one of those, like a hole in the head, when the description of the Labour Party supposedly reads democratic socialist. But who believes that anymore? Again, we have one pro-corporate party, we don't need two. But then when Labour and the Tories are only distinguished these days by the colour of the ties and the colour of the rosettes, and actually don't have, but actually what we end up having is two pro-corporate parties. We just take turns selecting between one wing of the same party now, because they're both the same. Standing up for workers' rights is Labour Party 101. It is the founding, singular, number one principle. But we should have guessed Starmer didn't get that and didn't put it as number one when even in his original 10 pledges, when he brought them out, not that he kept any of them, of course, but workers' rights were number 7 out of 10. Number one for him, even then, was the economy. Of course, he broke that pledge too. The most vulnerable workers in our economy are exploited and are earning their own poverty under the Tories. They'll now continue to earn their poverty under a Labour one too. There are millions of workers in the gig economy in this sector, and Starmer's just thrown them all under a bus because, just like any other Tory, he doesn't give a damn about them and doesn't give a toss, frankly, about anyone but himself. He has to go. He can't be worthy of your vote, surely. Would you honestly give it away so cheaply to a man like him who cannot ever keep a single word he ever says? Thanks for watching. I hope you found the video useful. Please like, share and subscribe if you did. More content out daily. Please have your say in the comments too and join the conversation on this. Meanwhile, here's a video recommendation where broken promises are just about the only consistency, frankly, in Starmer's leadership. And recently he went on a bit of a binge and broke 3 promises all in 1 week. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.